I just really don't know where to start with this one. There's so much going on in these shoes, and it's packed, absolutely packed with information, details, hits, amazing stories, and a sob story for the poor guys over at Nike, massive multi-billion-dollar corporation that they are. They've missed the boat literally on these shoes, but we'll get into all of that in a two-part video to get this pack off the ground. Now I'm seeing 4 Dunk highs, but I'm guessing there's more out there. Just the way that people are talking about this first use line, and I don't think it's going to be restricted to Dunks, and I don't think it's going to be restricted to these 4 colorways. And the 4 colorways I'm going for are 2 solid colorways, which you're seeing behind me here mashed together in a hybrid thumbnail, the University Gold and the red. And then tomorrow it's the inverse of that. Basically today's shoes are all about solid colors with white outline hits, and then tomorrow's shoes are all about sort of white sneakers with color hits on them. So there's a kind of inverse thing going on. So I'm going to split it and do today with the solid colors and do tomorrow with the hits and the sort of little details in the coloring on there. So staying with today's shoe, like I said, the thumbnail behind me here has got half in the University red. It's not University red, it's straight up red, and the other half in the University Gold, and it's Dunk highs that we're talking about, and that sob story for the old boys over at Nike, and that missed the boat, a little bit of a pun there, because basically shipping lanes are a wreck all over the world. One of the biggest stories of the coronavirus, which isn't getting out there to people, is that the shipping lines are absolutely congested. As soon as one place goes down, the rest falls like a kind of dominoes effect, and there was a big problem down in China with coronavirus at one of the ports, and that's just had this massive knock-on effect. And the reason that we can know that for this shoe, because they're not talking about it, but you can't get away from the fact that it says June, is it the 18th on the side of these guys? First used June 18th, 1971. There's no way in the world that Nike didn't aim for this shoe or these shoes to drop 1 month ago on June the 18th. They are not going to have the 50th anniversary of their signature swoosh logo coming on that date and printing it on the side of shoes, and then not have the shoes drop on those dates. So that's all about the shipping lines. I'm sure they're putting a brave face on it over at Nike, and they're saying that they deliberately put it this way, or this is where they wanted it to be. But I think there was probably a whole massive marketing machine behind these shoes, and that whole first use, is it June 18th? Like I said, I can't remember the exact date, but it's definitely not where we are now. I'm shooting this video on June the 30th. In fact, not quite midnight yet, so it's not quite July the 1st, but it'll probably go up onto YouTube around about July the 2nd, I think. But definitely past that June date, and I'm 100% sure that's all about the shipping lanes. But what I do have for you is a drop date, which is July the 6th. Now, it's those boys over at Sole Supplier in the UK that are giving us that drop date, which might be earlier than you'll see it in North America, because there are more choices for getting stuff out of Asia and into Europe, for example, across rail lines and across land, and not just relying on shipping routes. But from Asia to North America, it's pretty much the boats or bust, and if the boats aren't going, you're not getting your shoes. So it might be that these guys drop on July the 6th in the UK and Europe, because that's where Sole Supplier are based in the UK, and that's why they have their drop information. But maybe North America will come later. I'm here in Japan, haven't seen these guys show up on any of the apps or the social media or anything like that to say that they're going to drop here on July the 6th. So I don't know what about the rest of the world, but Sole Supplier out of the UK, therefore Europe, look for July the 6th for these guys. Now let's get into them and talk about these shoes. Again, like I said, we've already blabbed on about the fact that it's the reds and the University Golds today. So basically very solid colors in the shoes, and then a few hits of white detailing, and that'll all be reversed in tomorrow's video. So so let's get into it and have a look at some of the details. I think I'm going to go with the first the sort of bling blingy one, which jumps right out at me, is on the tongues, not the tongues, on the laces. They have a sort of lace stay. It's not a Dubray, which would usually appear down at the bottom of an Air Force One, but halfway up you can see that kind of classic gold Nike Dubray, and then right at the sort of fat part of the swoosh it's got a little a diamond effect. I'm almost certain. I think I can say it with a lot of certainty. It's not a real diamond, but it's a sort of diamond stud effect at the bottom of the sort of fattest part of the swoosh in there, and it's a nice little detail to start the shoe off with that bling bling. But also looking at that, it's very easy to look at the laces, and you see that double lace effect, which will remind a lot of us of what's going on over the Sakai line with their waffles and their blazer mids, where they have the double laces, and on top of that they also have double tongues and double swooshes and double layering and tons of other stuff on those beautiful shoes. But these guys, it's just the only doubling up comes on those laces in right around that area where you see the lace stay in the middle. And then up from that, let's get on to those tongues. Interesting things happening on the tongues on both sides, and we'll look at the front side first, and you see basically classic OG styling, because this is supposed to be first use. It's supposed to celebrate the first use of the swoosh 50 years ago, and so that first use sort of idea going on there lends itself to OG styling and OG detailing, and that you can see up on the top of the tongues in there. I especially like the fact that the swoosh on there matches the colorway. So on the reds you'll see a red swoosh, but if you flip that out to the university golds, you'll see a university gold swoosh on there, which I think is a nice little touch. But the biggest touch is actually on the back end of the tongue branding, where you can see a big old paragraph of writing talking about how these shoes are a homage to 50 years of that swoosh icon. So it's nice to have that special bit of detailing on the back of the tongues there. And then looking down into the insole, you see some more sort of OG style branding on there. Now, a major feature of these guys comes in the swooshes, so we might as well go down and have a look at one of the lateral swooshes. This is also a very good place to look to see what I mean about the solid colouring of the upper and then the outline colouring of the swoosh. And that's supposed to be a call back to the original style of swooshes, which were outlines lateral side only, outline swooshes, because if you look at the medial side, you'll see it's a filled in swoosh, which is much more contemporary, but still in the same sort of colour blocking that you get on the lateral side. But my favourite thing about the swooshes, hands down, without even having to think about it, is actually where they do not meet at the heel. So you look at the heels here and you'll see the way that outline swoosh kind of doesn't quite make it. I think it's outline swoosh that doesn't quite make it around the heel, and then the solid swoosh that does make it all the way to the end. And I just totally love that. I think it's a great little detail. They could have fought really hard to get those two swooshes to meet, and it wouldn't have been authentic. I think having them not meet is actually the coolest thing about it, instead of trying to have them meet. So that offset, slightly off kilter, unmatching swooshes at the heel is a big plus for me in both of these shoes. So a nice little detail there. Now, looking at one thing that separates the two is the outsoles on these guys. If you go to the outsole on the University Golds, you'll see there's almost a tiny hint of translucence in the gum sole, which you don't see, and we'll bring up the reds and see what the outsole on the reds looks like. You don't see that on the reds. So it's a nice little sort of change up there. The gold sort of lends itself to a gum sole feel and a gum sole vibe, which they've definitely gone with on the outsole of those University Golds. And then I guess the last thing to really look at, I think, I'll try and see if I've forgotten to mention some detail about these guys, but the last thing I want to look at is the materials, which is probably the first place that most people start with most shoes, because these guys have so much going on in them. I'm happy to leave the materials to the end, and what they're talking about is leathers and soft suedes, and it's actually around about the heel and the ankle support that you can see that in most definition and see the detailing on those materials. High quality, very nice materials going in to make these shoes one of the nicest shoes of the season. Like I say, July the 6th is the drop date that I'm here, and these guys are going to come down thanks to those sole supplier guys. So let's see, have I covered everything I wanted to cover in this video? I'm just going to have a look down at my notes, which I always keep below the camera, I can see there it says June the 18th, I think. My eyesight's not so good anymore, but I think I've covered all the detailing that I wanted to get into, and especially talking about those hard solid colours in the red and the University Golds, and then tomorrow we'll see those fade into the background and be actually small details on a much whiter pair of shoes. But that's about it for today. Hopefully you guys appreciate that look at the first use. It's a great story, it's a great shoe. It's just a little bit out of sync with the current times because of that coronavirus, I am sure. And if I'm wrong about that, hey, I'm wrong about it, but definitely let me know in the comments down below if you know different about why the drop date for these guys isn't June the 18th, 2021. 50 years to the day. And that being said, that's enough for today's video. Hopefully you guys appreciate that, and hopefully you'll look forward to tomorrow's part 2 of this video when we look at the inverse of these two colorways. But for now, it's time for us to chip off. Thank you guys for checking out the content, and I'll say the same thing that I say at the end of every single video, which is that I do this every single day, and that means that you are guaranteed to see me tomorrow.